Thomas, thanks for coming onto Social Dream Machine. This show is dedicated basically to making money online, kind of all those people that we all see kind of making money on X and LinkedIn and trying to join those groups of people as well. So I know that you're already kind of in the creator economy. So just for those that don't know you, would you mind introducing yourself and what do you do and how do you make money online?
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. So my name's Thomas Ball. I'm a copywriter for health and wellness experts and also a CSM for Dakota Robertson, who runs a program called Growth Ghosts. So we help train the top 1% of ghostwriters. And yeah, so I got into copywriting, well, first into blog writing and so forth back in 2017. Worked a little bit for a media company, was doing some like SEO style writing. Later, I got into some other things. That company kind of folded unexpectedly, and then it took me several years to kind of come back around and get into the online writing space again. And when I did, I started off on Twitter. I got into ghostwriting, very quickly moved more into a copywriting capacity, and now that's what I do for my clients, mainly email marketing, funnel optimization, and just making sales on the back end.
How long did it take you to like make money online? Because I could tell you that it took me 8 months to monetize my LinkedIn, and it was just like I thought it was one of those things where I was going to just build content and that I would have like leads and it would be like super easy, and it was not that way at all. I found out like quite quickly that it was not like one of those. It was a lot harder than I thought it would be, put it that way. And it took me. I know that there's like DM strategies and all sorts of stuff like that, but what do you think of? How long did it take you to like make money, and was it like a little bit nerve-wracking at first as far as like knowing what to offer and all, the pricing and all that kind of stuff?
I never really had the experience that a lot of people sort of romanticize of like my first online dollar, where it's like this really powerful thing for them and it really shifts their mindset. Like I've definitely seen that happen for people, but I started, let's see, I guess my first dollar made online with any service at all was actually teaching English.
Nice.
Back in 2015. But I guess it doesn't really hit the same as, I don't know, creating a product or something. But still, it's kind of like you figure out, okay, I don't need to be in an office. I don't need to be in a physical place. I can find other ways to make money online. And then, like I said, in 2017, I guess that was my first taste of like freelance online writing, like doing something that wasn't still bound to like being in a place at a certain time, let's say, giving the English lessons and so forth. So that kind of helped me break free. And coincidentally, when I got the lead to start writing those blog posts and so forth, it came completely out of the blue on LinkedIn. Like this was, early days of LinkedIn, and I had optimized my resume, actually, and not even really optimized my profile in the way we think of it now. And it was enough back then, to get me an inbound lead, and that kind of set me on the path.
So walk me through that inbound lead there. Were you writing content at the time, or how did that happen? And
No,
this is
that's
2017. You said you were optimizing or just your profile, or no, you
just
weren't. You were
my
good.
resume. Like I was still kind of in employee mode back then, right?
Got it.
It actually, that's a whole nother story. I've written about it a little bit, but completely saved my ass because I was caddying at the time. I did that for a few years, and I blew out my back, so I actually couldn't work, right? And I went online and was just trying to find some way to leverage my abilities. I've always been a really good writer. I've always understood psychology fairly well, and I was looking for ways to put that together, but it really was kind of a fluke that just saved me, because I hadn't really optimized my resume to be a writer per se. It just happened to be in a niche that I had some expertise in.
Tell me a little bit about writing too, because it seems like in general, like as a writer, you could like probably be feast or famine depending on like how you structure yourself. So like, how do you look at like I guess like the value of writing and like how to like convey that into like dollars and cents? Because it's that seems like kind of part of the trick too.
I guess it's really easy in the sense that any type of advertising, practically any type of advertising, it includes writing, right? Like any product you're selling, anything you see online, all the social media apps, right? Even though they have visual components, even though they have audio components, the kind of the first interface, let's say, is always through writing. So I guess it just makes it really easy to find different avenues to to build lists first, whether it's, just top of funnel stuff like getting followers, or whether it's, something more like middle of funnel, like building an email list or making sales on the back end. Um, you can write scripts for YouTube shorts. You can do long form sales letters. You can do, social media content, LinkedIn, Twitter, and short things. You can do, just any number of different avenues you can take.
How do you make sure you don't get commoditized too, as well, though? Because I feel like it's just like a logo too. Like, right, you could find someone that's like Paul Rand that did like the FedEx logo that probably charged a bunch of money, or someone on like Fiverr that like commoditizes themselves. So, do you have any advice on like that, as far as like how to like not be in, how to be more in that boutique category of writers?
I think a common problem there is that people confuse their service with their offer. They don't really know how to distinguish. So it's like, your service is like, I'm an email copywriter, or, I'm a direct response copywriter. I do long form sales letters, or, I'm a podcast coach, or what have you. But that's just what you do, right? The offer it would be something like, I'll help you grow your podcast to 5,000 followers and make your first X dollars in 90 days. Or, plug in whatever. I'll help you get desire in time frame without thing that you hate. That's basically the formula, standard formula for a good offer. Lots of variations, but I guess that's the simple answer. It's just, if you can find somebody who needs help with, a problem that's important in their life, and usually in our space, right, is going to be a business problem, a cash flow problem. And you just find a way to take your service, but think about the actual benefit that it creates for that person. That's really the way to set yourself apart, because you don't even have to look at it like you're competing with other people in the market. You're just inserting yourself in a specific moment in time when a person has a very specific pain point, and offering a simple solution. And that offer, where you add in those other components, right? The time frame, the KPIs, that's really what makes it more unique for that person you're speaking to, and makes it more valuable, in my opinion.
Are you ever like nervous about the offer though at first? Or like, I think that sometimes I'm always hesitant to promise stuff because I don't really, I guess my anxious side of my brain doesn't know if it's gonna work, that part of it. Like, for example, if like you're a ghostwriter and you're like, hey, I promise you like 5,000 followers in like 2 months or whatever. I think those offers are really cool, but I also wonder like how does like the creator know they could actually pull that off?
You don't really until you've done it. That's the biggest uphill battle in the beginning. And it's why people fight so much with imposter syndrome. It's because you are until you do it. So it's always a good idea, even when, and especially when you're working on getting that first testimonial or that first experience, to under promise and over deliver. It's cliche because it's true. Because otherwise, you're just not going to have that confidence in yourself to be able to deliver that specific outcome. So, but there's always that period in the beginning where there is no way of knowing if it's going to work. And you have to just find a way with your offer to de-risk it entirely for the person on the other end, because that's what business owners are most concerned about. We're everybody really, we're more afraid of the fire, right? We want to run from it more than we want to just get a little bonus. Or in other words, like, we're more scared of losing money than we are of making it. So, and that's where you see a lot of these offers that are like, you know, I'll get you X in time frame without whatever, or you don't pay, or I'll work with you until we do, or fill in the blank. It's all just de-risking psychologically.
Makes sense. And then what do you think about like what other ways you have to like de-risk things? Would that be like money back guarantee? What other avenues do you think could actually sweeten that deal, or is it like bonuses or something like that, or how do you think about it?
There are lots of ways theoretically I could do it, but in my actual experience, I say no to a lot of people. I say no to people that I don't want to work with long term, or whose products I don't truly believe in. And that makes it so that even if I were to get myself in a situation where I didn't hit the KPIs that I had promised, as quickly as I wanted, or if something went south or just took longer to get a certain result, it makes it where I can really get that person on my side as well, because they know I believe in their product. Like, they know I would have never even taken them on board unless I really believed in what they're doing. And I found that helps. It helps everybody just trust each other. And obviously, I mean, you have to, at the end of the day, I have to deliver, right? But I've just found that in situations where results come in a little slower than first expected, which can happen sometimes, it makes it easier to keep the client on board. They're a little more forgiving, and it gets me out of a situation of working for somebody and having all the stress of having to deliver a really hard KPI, or like over promising for somebody who at the end of the day I really don't want to work with.
Do you use your intuition then for these people? Because it seems like it's a lot of the times where I'll know if someone's going to be a pain probably ahead of time, and there's like probably some red flags there that I'm probably ignoring when they're like, "Hey, could you do this and do that?" and da 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 da. I don't know. Do you find that sometimes it's their expectations might be a little bit off, or it seems like also like the dream clients are less of a hassle. They have like maybe less self-limiting beliefs for whatever reason, and maybe they're just operating at a level where you don't have to like completely pull them up from like the weeds. I guess I don't know. Thoughts of that?
I think a lot of it is frame control, because if you go into a sales call with somebody who's 50 steps ahead of you in business, right? They're so used to driving the ship, to steering the ship, right? That, like, that's going to be their sort of natural default. But you can't let that happen when in those first communications with the client. I'm not saying you have to try to like strong arm everyone all the time, but it's just like you have to be very clear about what you are an expert at, and not say yes to a bunch of things that you don't know anything about. So you're not trying to like, falsify it, like seem like an expert in something that you're not. But you have to really stand on what you do know, and stand on your no as well. I found that to be really helpful. Like, there are times, and I mean, clients will respect you way more for this, or potential clients, if you're talking and you're just, and sometimes you have to say no, that's actually, it's a terrible idea, and I'll tell you why. And then you use your experience, right, to demonstrate why XYZ won't work, and how you've solved that problem in the past. If you can do that, then anytime you say no, or you're steering the ship in another direction, they'll trust you because you have evidence to back it up.
Yeah, I think that sometimes some certain people have a hard time with like confrontation, and sometimes I do think that you have to say no and just say, "Hey, like that's maybe not my particular thing that I specialize in." And plus, I think when people do take on more than they could, like when they bite off more that they can chew, it's usually when you're stressed out because you're just trying to like fake it till you make it, and then figure out that particular thing. But do you find that you kind of end up being kind of doing like the same style of work? Like maybe it's like newsletters, or it's like carousels, or just content creation in general, or what is some things that you, I guess, don't take, and some things that you like look forward to?
So the biggest change for me since I really got into writing online, like taking it seriously, full throttle, which really has just been in the last year, basically. I started with ghostwriting, social media, Twitter mostly, but I knew from the very beginning that that was only a stepping stone, right? It was just a mechanism to get some money in the bank. And, I got people results with it, but it was a mechanism to get some money in the bank while I studied copywriting and sales psychology more deeply, because that's really what I always wanted to do.
I really like that book by Robert Cialdini, Influence, and there's a lot of nice psychological principles in there, like the law of like reciprocity. Like, so I think that works with like comments. Like that's why like when you see people comment on each other's posts, they're more inclined probably to comment back if they're probably within similar size. But is there any other psychological things that you've picked up on that you try to use in your writing?
Yeah, actually, and I remember the last thing. What I wanted to point out there before I go to that is that I started more with like social media, right? Kind of top of funnel stuff. And then I moved more into the longer form, you know, emails. I haven't gotten too much into like really long form sales letters, although it is something I'm working on. I'm developing video sales letters and so forth. But other psychological things that can help. I mean, there are lots of tactics, but what I've found is that more so than what's more important than knowing any tactic is really understanding the underlying concept, right? So fundamentally, if you understand the qualitative aspects of your ideal customer's experience or the ideal client of your client, right? Then you can really adapt the writing or the video or the content in general for any medium and make it work, because we're always, whenever there's a problem in our lives that we do anything to solve, it's like we're always looking for it. Even if we're not consciously aware of it, we're always kind of scanning for a fix to it. So that's really I don't think it's that, you gotta comment or like use a certain formatting on, LinkedIn or Twitter or what have you. I think it really is just like, do you have good hooks? Can you capture attention and hold it in a way that is appropriate to the platform and the message and what let's say the magnitude or simplicity of what you're trying to sell.
I like what you said there. The hook is very important. How do you hold the attention? Is that sort of like rehooking, or I don't know, thoughts on that? Like, how do you keep it?
Yeah, well, there's a concept in copywriting that we call the slippery slope, right? So the whole idea is very simply that the purpose of each line is just to get people to read the next line. That's all. Because if you try to do too much, right, you can lose them. But it's just being conversational and actually, because people give that tip all the time, right? In these like writing tips accounts and so forth, they'll say, write like you speak. But seriously, I often just dictate all the emails that I write. I mean, like I will sometimes sit there and it's mostly with editing, right? Afterwards, that's really the key for me. I dictate with voice typing on Google most of the time, just to get the main idea out. Because I've found also that there's a certain energy and power that comes through my voice when I get in the zone, when I'm basically pitching, I'm making a sales argument. That just doesn't come through the same if I try to do it all internally typing. So I leverage that power and speak to actually get the words on paper, and then I go back after the fact and do the editing. And that's where you can increase the effectiveness of your copy, where you really work on the transitions, the formatting, the white space, um, just making it flow really nicely, making it as easy as possible to get to the next line.
Why do you think that some people's content just takes off and other people's doesn't? As far as like some people are just, I know that there's some people that are just like really badass copywriters, but I also feel like one thing that I've noticed is that like the relatability factor, like you'd mentioned Dakota earlier, and I think he was very relatable, and that's the reason why I really like him, and I think that's the way a lot of people other like him as well. But I think that one flaw that I do see personally too is I see that some people are not relatable, where like they're just always talking about just how like just too much of the highs and not enough of like the struggles and like the low or whatever, which is like something that I've kind of picked up on like in the last, I don't know, obviously storytelling is really important, but like there is no story basically without like that arc or like that low. Is there anything else that like that you've picked up on that you're just kind of like you see that people making a mistake or that they could do better?
Vulnerability really is one of the keys to connecting with as wide of an audience as possible and having, let's say, virality. Because yeah, that's one of the things. It's a mental block, emotional block that people struggle to get over in the beginning because it can be scary, right? Like if you've never shared anything personal about yourself online before, maybe even like to your group of friends, you don't go that deep, right? Then it can feel really weird, posting this thread or long form about some of your deepest struggles. But yeah, I mean, that's where you become a mirror and people see themselves in you because it's basically the mirror of humanity, right? It's the thing that takes that uniqueness away for a moment and lets people see the universal in your story. And now that's something we could talk for a long time about that because, right? I mean, the power of the hero's journey, it's like a universal template that really any story ever told is in that archetypal form. So that has a lot to do with it too. It's like when people and it's not something that there's like an exact template for that either, but you just know it when you see it. You know it when you feel it. Sometimes people are able to just integrate their unique experience into that hero's journey, that more universal form, and it just really catalyzes it. So yeah, I think those are the biggest things, and I also think about, I edit a ton of hooks these days, is part of my CSM gig, in Dakota's cohort, and well, and long forms as well, not just the hooks. But I find myself spending almost all the time on helping people with hooks because they actually struggle with that key part of like, how do I tell a story that's about me? It's an intensely personal story, but how do I frame it such that there's a benefit, an instantly recognizable, valuable benefit for the reader? So I think that's kind of the magic sauce, if you can figure out how to do that consistently.
One thing I've noticed too is like the using numbers seems to work to have something in the frame. I don't know if it's because it makes your mind go into like a specific detail or like time frames as well. I think that it just gives like more context. Parker Worth also comes to mind too because he talks about like being like a janitor and then all of a sudden like making like multiple six figures online, and he's got like neck tattoos and just a cool dude or whatever. So you just see these things like that, and I don't know. I think that part of it, like it's one of those things too. If I was a janitor at one point, I don't even know if I would have the balls to admit it. So I think that that's why it's probably powerful because they're just kind of just going all in, like with like, hey, like look, I've been in like really bad places before, and but I think that that's what makes the story powerful. How do you look at like hooks as well? Because like how do you think that I struggle with it too sometimes, where I think that my like the non-poser side of my brain, like, I grew up like as a skateboarder or whatever, so I never wanted to be the person that was like talking crap and like never you'd be like the person that go hit the rail or whatever, and then they're like, cool, like I'll go do it or whatever. So I guess the hooks, it's like rewiring my brain because I was never used to like just sort of like kind of saying these things that like, and just kind of, it's almost just like a dream state, almost like the way I view it, like here's a dream's outcome without like the work essentially. So like it's like one of those weird things where it's just like in my brain, like I know, I think I know how to do it, it's just like I'm naturally not good at like wanting to go there.
What you're really doing, like when you capture someone's attention, and this is like really profound if you actually think about it. When you capture somebody's attention, for a moment, they sort of cease to exist, right? Like their ego, their conscious mind, it arrests that part of you and it puts you in this state of suggestibility, right? So, like, that's really what's happening with a great hook. Now, when you get down into the like real details of how that's happening, like it's still just language is still just communicating, right? Again, those pain points, like it's also playing on hope, right? So you talked about like Parker Worth, right? Or like these stories of like rags to riches, let's say. People love that because it activates hope, right? And it's that's so powerful. Like, I mean, fear is even more powerful, I would argue, in terms of hooks. I know people don't like that, but honestly, it's the truth. Like, fear is more powerful if you just want to get people's attention, but hope is pretty damn powerful too. So um, you can always kind of, and you can raise the stakes. Like, there's so many ways to do this. You can mix the two together, right? Fear and hope. It's like it just intensifies everything. But that's really the main concept I wanted um, to mention. There is like, if you can find a way to speak to those pain points or those fears or those, and not just the obvious ones. That's another thing that really goes in direct response marketing as well. Like, you have to you have to study the mind of your ideal client well enough to where you don't just know all the obvious fears and doubts and objections that anyone could come up with, if you told them what your product does, but also all the hidden ones, right? Like the ones that are in there but that they don't actually want to say, or the ones that are in there but they don't know how to say. Like, that's what you want to do. You want to create hooks, and then you want to create all your content, really, like all your copy, especially sales copy, should really get them saying, damn, it's like, this guy is in my head, he knows me better than I know myself.
I love that. Yeah. Last question for you, actually. So, how do you get into the head of the person? I like what you said there because it seems like you figure out how to say like the common threads of things, but you also kind of seems like you're talking about the things that they might even not know how to actually voice. So you're kind of tapping into something even a little bit deeper. But how do you get into the brains of them? Is it just like through interviewing them, or like what's the deal?
Actually, interviewing is the best way to just talk to people. That's something that I think a lot of people, a lot of businesses probably don't do enough of. Actually speaking to people, not just giving them like a pop-up survey form that the majority of people just click off of anyway, but really like calling up your list, give them a 20% off coupon or whatever your thing is. Like, create something that makes it valuable for them. Or, if even better, if you've already gotten really great results for people, like, they'll be willing to do that anyway because you've already helped change their lives. So but yeah, just getting on the phone and asking them, hey, like, what were the biggest struggles you had before you came in? How did my product or service help you solve that? What was your life like before? What's it like now? But then to really dig into some of those things. Or what you'll find is that a lot of times, like in those moments when you're having a call with the person, right? A phrase will just pop out and you're like, oh man, that's gold. Like, that's the thing that I need to put in the copy, or that's the like hook that I need to put in my next video. And it just comes out of those spontaneous moments where someone is expressing without without thinking about it, like without censoring themselves. So if you can get somebody on the phone, get them comfortable enough to open up, then like you can create great marketing material that helps people get over that hump to actually buy a product or service that changed their lives.
One last thought for you. Do you have any favorite books do you want to leave us with? And then where do people reach you if they'd like to use you for your copywriting services or follow you?
One is The Law of One. If you just type that in, look it up, or LNL Research. Um, it'll be a bit out there for some people. It's basically like a collection of spiritual texts and channeled works and so forth. The Law of One in particular was by three individuals back in the early 80s. But they basically dive into these deep questions of the universe, and this material comes through in a way that I'm like, I've never found any other material out there that rings as true as that does for me. I've studied a lot of world religions too, but anyway,
That
and
sounds interesting. I'll pick that up. I
yeah,
like
I mean,
spirituality.
I could add a lot into the class. I mean, the Bible, like read the Bible, read, the Bhagavad Gita, read the Kabbalah. I mean, any number of texts, but that's one that really rings true for me. So law one, for some, if people want to get into copywriting or direct response marketing, I would say breakthrough advertising. Great leads if you want to write better hooks, or even if you're doing videos and you want to improve your pitch. Great leads. That's the one to go with. And the Adweek copywriting handbook. I'd say those three, like, you'll be set.
Okay, thanks for those. I'm going to actually have to pick up all three of those. And then where do people reach out if they want to follow you and work with you?
You can find me thomasballcopywriting.com. I'm on Twitter. My handle's the1infinite. And yeah, those are the best places.
Awesome. Thanks for your time, man.
All right, thanks, Jeremy. Glad to be here, man.